Nice try.
Yeah. Hey everyone, we're back for the final match of the Paragon Sapphire Open, and I'm here now with Josh Ophel, our wonderful artist of all the tokens and other promotional materials.
Hey guys.
So the final match of the day is going to be Dennis Mullins versus James Wilkes, and as before, Dennis is on Dredge, and Jim, making his way back to the feature match table, is on Jund.
Yeah, very interesting matchup. What do you think? Who do you think is favoured? How do you feel going into this one, playing, I don't know, Jund into Dredge? How do you feel?
So we've seen this matchup a couple of times on camera, and we're just starting up now, actually. So we'll transition over to the table, and we've seen this matchup a couple of times already.
Yep.
And Dredge is capable of getting out of some really, really fast starts.
Yeah.
And even running along, it still has a lot of staying power. So I don't think that Jund is really excited to see this as their opponent sits down.
Yeah, but like one of the big draw cards of playing Jund ever is that no matchup is truly unwinnable. Like there is a sequence of things that you can do to win almost any game in any matchup.
Of course.
So what kind of things do you think Jim has to be doing this game to try and, win?
Jim's most powerful tool in this matchup is Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah.
And he has 2 copies of them in his deck. If he's able to land one of those early and have a surplus of green mana to feed it, he'll be able to prevent Dennis from enacting his game plan.
Right. And Dennis is enacting his game plan right now with Faith Saluting on 1. He's going to get a chance to put some dredges in the yard and start dredging.
And as we can sort of see from his hand on the camera, he has 2 Bloodghast that he's discarding.
Okay, so it's a pretty aggressive start. That's
very powerful. 4 power on turn 2 at no cost of mana.
Yeah, that's pretty. And obviously Jim hasn't got a Inquisition or a Thoughtseize or anything to sort of disrupt that game turn 1. I don't know how good the hand disruption is in this matchup, but
it has proven to be a little bit ineffective in previous matches. In our semi-finals, we saw that Sylvius attempted to use those to interact, and all he found was a Narcomoeba.
Yeah, I feel like on the plane maybe you can take the 1-drop that draws discards or
hitting the neonates
or
the insolent neonates or the faithful salutings that Dennis is playing. Taking them away before he can use them is hugely impactful. It stops him from filling his graveyard and getting these sweet synergies in play.
It's I feel like, I'm not sure. Do you think they're bad enough that you wouldn't want them in game 2 and 3 at all?
I certainly wouldn't be excited of playing any number of targeted discard.
Yeah. I feel like if it does get to that long game, kind of like we saw with Sylvius last round, they become such a dead draw. And, often even turn 2 and 3, it's too late for the hand disruption. Because basically Dennis wants to put his deck into the graveyard. That's where it lives.
And the early enablers for Dennis's strategy come down so quickly. And in the case of Faithful Saluting, even if Dennis is to have that taken by a discard spell, it's only a matter of time before he can flash it back.
Yeah, Jim has actually got a board position now. He's developed his board with the Tarmogoyf, one of the greatest closers of the game. It's 2/3 at the moment with sorcery, creature, and land in the yard, which means it's going to be able to block these Bloodghasts.
Yeah, although the Bloodghasts have not made it to the battlefield. Is the trigger, or if he's possibly there's some dominance battles taking place of these 2 creatures, and getting some extra section of the playmat for themselves.
Oh yeah,
but
got to keep that combat zone for combat. So the Neonate on the board on 2, that's interesting. Would you I'm not sure if you lead with the Neonate or you lead with the Faithless Looting, which one's more efficient? I guess the Looting puts 2 cards in the yard to begin with.
Yeah, although the Neonate does allow an immediate dredge.
Right.
It's possible that Dennis doesn't have a dredger in hand. The deck doesn't play a exhaustive number.
Right. So I guess it plays the Grave Troll and Stinkweed Imp.
Yeah, and Life from the Loam is certainly a dredge card, but it's not as effective as those others, only dredging 3 cards.
Yeah, so it's sort of 2 angles to the deck, trying to exploit putting creatures into play at no or low costs, and then also, kind of going off with a big dredge 6 with the Grave Troll.
Yeah.
It's really come to life as a deck with the Grave Troll unbanning, and it's obviously performing.
The printing of Prized Amalgam just enabled this critical mass of creatures that come back to life from the graveyard without having to spend mana to do so.
So it's interesting that Dennis didn't put the Bloodghast in play.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a mistrigger or if he's got some sort of ulterior motive. Oh, okay. So he has got the Grave Troll. So
That's another reason that he might have wanted to run out the Neonate second.
Yep.
It has given him a pretty big chunk of extra life by blocking that Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It gives him more time to set up. And do you think if this game goes long, it favours Dennis?
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
Jim does have that Scavenging Ooze and powerful Planeswalkers, which only get better the longer time goes on.
Well, how powerful are the Planeswalkers in the matter? Because obviously Liliana, I'm not really sure how effective she is against Dredge.
It starts to look a little grim for Liliana.
Yeah, because there's so many
+1 ability is pretty risky.
Right.
Putting a Golgari Grave Troll or a Confligate into the graveyard from Dennis's hand is
helping your opponent.
Is really helping. And you're costing yourself cards to make their strategy better.
Yeah, so
and
I
you
feel
don't
like
want to do
Liliana's
that.
one of the first cards coming out.
Well, maybe not, because there's a pretty large number of targeted discard spells, the Inquisitions and the Thoughtseize. Jim plays 6 of those 1-mana discard spells, as well as a Collective Brutality, which primary use is the rest mode. So Liliana might be the best of the worst options. As
a
free
maybe
mana
it's going to
Edict.
pick up a little dude. I don't know how good Edict is though. Like if you're sacrificing a Bloodghast, that's really 0 cost to your opponent, and you spent your whole third turn playing something to almost do nothing. Yeah, feels pretty rough. Like what cards do you think he's bringing in to replace the Lilianas?
So Jim's board is slightly less suited to this matchup than Sylvius's was.
Yep.
He only has 1 copy of Anger the Gods and 2 copy of Nihil Spellbomb that are evidently great in the matchup.
So Dennis is attacking here with everything. So
his creatures being blocked or
8 power,
or having removal spells pointed at them. It's not really a worry to him. He's happy for that to happen.
Yeah, that's pretty big. It's turn 3 attacking for 8.
I think, especially after seeing our Arch match and the way that this is going, the Dren deck has the tools, but it really needs them, and it needs them fast.
Yeah.
As we've seen from both of these games, both James and Sylvius didn't find their early Scavenging Ooze, and the Dredge deck was able to get a little bit out of control.
Yeah. Yeah, so it looks like Jim's getting raced.
Yeah, and Tarmogoyf is an exceptional creature, very, very powerful.
Yeah, it may have gotten bigger. It might still actually just be a 2/3. This is sorcery, land, creature.
Yeah, the Dredge deck doesn't really have that much diversity in its card types.
Right,
So even though it's filling its graveyard very, very quickly, it's not actually growing the Tarmogoyf very much. He is, by the looks of things, it's still messing around as a free-for.
Okay.
There's a Conflagrate from Dennis there, which represents a very, very dangerous amount of reach.
Well, is that, depending on how many cards Dennis has in hand, is he potentially representing lethal next turn?
Very possibly. He has
2, 4, 6. Okay, so Jim's going to drop
10 damage to play.
3/3, but he still has,
so down to 7 potential damage. And Tarmogoyf is there as a blocker.
As a 4/5. Yeah, as a 4/5.
The addition of the Abrupt Decay.
Bloodghast can't block. So
no, it cannot.
It could attack before, but I feel like that's just legitimately scooping because, obviously Dennis representing lethal with
unless Jim has a very strong follow-up.
Right.
Attacking with Tarmogoyf is very ambitious.
Yeah. But it could be his only way of representing it. Like if he can deal with the creature, stay alive, it's definitely a tricky situation for Jim because blocking is very unlikely to produce a victory as well. Yeah, blocking any of these creatures almost does nothing because they come back into play with any land drop or.
And now that Jim is below 10 life, those Bloodghasts are coming back with haste.
Yeah, that's rough.
So he's going to have a very hard time keeping this board under control.
I think Jim has a Collective Brutality in hand. That represents potentially a removal spell and a bit of gain life.
It's true, yeah. It also puts him back up above 10 life, which will turn off that haste.
Okay.
That's a bit of a fairly important
that's
dance.
Something. Yeah, so Dennis shows Jim 4 cards, which I guess represents 4 damage off the Confligate.
Yeah, and with just 1 block, that's 5 other damage sitting in play.
So I guess what Jim's thinking now is, can I kill a Bloodghast, gain a bit of life, attack with the Tarmogoyf, and still be alive for another attack in the following turn?
It seems a little bit risky because any land or like, I'm not sure if he has access to a life from Naloom. Oh no, he definitely does. There's one in his graveyard,
Yeah.
so he can any land represents the addition of a lot of damage.
Yeah. Well,
It
Jim's
adds two
actually
more to the
cast
power.
Brutality with all 3 modes, so he's discarded his 2 dead Lilianas in this matchup.
Yeah,
he's killing a Bloodghast. He's taking an instant or sorcery from Dennis's hand, which
looks
I think
like a
was
collective brutality. Yeah.
And now he's just assessing what kind of clock Dennis represents, and if Jim can present lethal, what he can draw to win. A bolt off the top, does that represent lethal?
No, not really. He's going to
Well,
be
now
able to
the
put it down to
Planeswalker's in the
6.
yard
Oh no,
with
yeah,
instant,
down to
I
5
think-
even.
I think Tarmogoyf is actually a 5/6, maybe.
Yeah,
And that is 2 turns. So
yeah.
I don't know if Jim has to go for it. Like, yeah, I'm not sure what Dennis can put into play to block the Tarmogoyf the following turn.
Any hits of Narcomoeba,
Right.
or if he was able to,
So the
draw a
amalgam is
stink with him.
if 2 creatures enter the...
no, just if any creature enters the battlefield, but it does come into play tapped, so it won't be able to block.
Okay, that's very relevant. Yeah.
Definitely.
So Bloodghast and Amalgam both represent creatures that are not going to be able to block.
Yeah,
So literally, I think Jim is playing to the out of maybe drawing a removal spell for the Narcomoeba, or...
yeah. It certainly seems like now that his Tarmogoyf is a 5/6,
Yeah.
the most plausible path to victory
Yep.
is by trying to win this race.
Yep. Well, yeah, I think because you have no disruption game 1, it is just a race, and you have to hope that Dennis stumbles, and you have to hope that you kind of, get a Tarmogoyf into play early.
Yeah. Scavenging Ooze is obviously an ace in the matchup,
Right.
but
Oh, okay, yep.
Yep.
So it was lethal. Lethal with the Confligate. Very nice.
a good attempt by Jim
Yeah, I
to
think
steal game 1, but
Often in a game of Magic, even when you're unfavored, you just have to go through every single possible motion to put yourself in a winning position.
exactly.
It might be a 40% matchup for John game 1, but there's a 40% chance
To
of
win.
winning the game. Yeah. And you have to do
Although
all
I
the
don't,
things
I
you-
don't believe that the matchup is quite that clear in
Yeah.
game 1. I think
Yeah.
that it starts moving that direction once
Yeah.
Jim has access to these powerful sideboard cards now,
Right.
Spellbomb, Anger of the Gods,
Yeah.
possibly even Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, I mean, there's a risk of overboarding and getting stuck with the kind of cards that are good in narrow situations. But what
It's
cards do you think you bring in here?
So the Damnation is of a lower quality
Yep.
to Anger the Gods, as it doesn't exile any of the creatures that it destroys, and it costs some extra mana.
Yep.
But I'm sure that Jim is going to be bringing that in as well.
Yeah, the extra mode of exiling creatures on Anger is glorious in this matchup. Kills
Super,
so
super
many things,
important.
keeps them dead.
Yeah,
You're definitely bringing in spell bombs to try and
totally.
just break up the plan.
They are one of the first things that Jim's going to be going
Yeah.
for from his
Yeah.
sideboard. Because he has such a large number of dead target removal spells
Yeah.
and the inefficient plain Liliana of the Veil,
Yeah.
he might be looking for those Kitchen Finks, or possibly
most
even
definitely.
Fulminator Mage.
I feel like Finks is going to be excellent here. I think just being a body that can raise, gaining a little bit of life, offering a trade to block if you need
Yeah.
to do that, just being able to make
Trying
the
to-
game go
yeah.
towards your game plan.
Yeah, trying to grind the dredge deck out is an exercise in futility, but the extra time that Finks
Right.
buys is so crucial.
Oh, definitely. Finks is just an undercosted monster. So good at everything.
As we saw from last game, giving everything -1/-1
Right.
can really favour the Jund player over
So you're
the
looking at
dredge.
the Golgari charm potentially.
Very possibly.
So what else does it do? Does it destroy an enchantment?
It can destroy enchantments. So, unlike Sylvius, who played a slightly bigger version of Jund,
Yeah.
Jim is playing a lot of creatures that rely on his graveyard.
Yep.
So, if Dennis is interested in sideboarding his Leyline of the Voids,
Yep.
he does cripple 8 of
Right.
Jim's frets.
Okay, that's interesting. As as the Dredge player, breaking up your plan to try and disrupt the Jund player, that's pretty interesting.
Well, the Leyline of the Void is not symmetrical.
Right.
It only affects Jim's graveyard.
Yeah.
So it costs Dennis nothing to have
Well,
it in his deck.
that is true.
Other than having
Yeah.
Leylines in his deck.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really going to be a call for Dennis of whether he wants to dilute his strategy a little bit, maybe take out some of the less crucial pieces.
Yeah. I definitely find myself bringing in cards like that that are a bit more average if I have more cards to bring out. So like, for example, Jim's hand disruption is almost all irrelevant. So it's good to just swap them into Kitchen Finks, which could be relevant. Even if they're not exceptional, they're going to be good.
They're not in the sideboard for the dredge matchup.
Yeah.
But you're happy to have them.
Exactly, yeah. That's why I think Jund and a lot of these mid-range decks tend to be 75 card decks in that you're just slightly improving different angles of your deck each switch.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily bringing in a thing that's a silver bullet that's going to win on the spot. Even though Nihil Spellbomb does get close to that, if you get a nice Spellbomb off, it is going to be really good at slowing Dredge down.
Totally. But unless you're getting that Spellbomb at the perfect moment, it's not going to end the game by itself.
Right.
And Modern is a really high power level format, and we've seen that a lot today. With the Dredge decks, with Storm, with Tron, with Infect. These incredibly powerful, well-tuned machines. And Jund is sort of the odd man out. And other strategies like Jund, sitting in this space of they're not the fastest, they're not the most powerful, they're not the most controlling. They've got a healthy medium in all of those aspects, and they can change their role in a matchup depending on what they need.
It is particularly interesting that, I think Jund fills that role because of the power of Thoughtseize, the ability to disrupt so many different decks in such an efficient way. But it is interesting, in this one matchup, Thoughtseize is actually kind of average. The one piece of hate that is generally so good against all these combo decks or overpowered decks is actually bad. Such a strange position for Jund to be in.
Certainly. It has, like you said, maintained a lot of its real estate in the format. With the power of those generic tools.
Just Thoughtseize into Tarmogoyf. Such an incredible opening to any game of Magic.
Definitely. But Jim's going to need a little bit more than that in this situation.
Definitely. I wonder what Jim exactly is bringing in, but I think we're likely to see him bring in those Wraths to try and mop up board if it gets out of hand. And definitely bring in the Grave Hate. I really like Nihil Spellbomb over things like Grafdigger's Cage because it doesn't really open you up to things like Ancient Grudge, which I think Dennis might even bring in. I'm not certain about that. Dennis might preempt the Nihil Spellbomb.
But
it depends. We saw Ancient Grudge last game.
Yeah, totally. It sort of depends on how much these players know about each other's sideboards because they've obviously been playing all day. And if they've had the opportunity to scout out their opponent's sideboards, they might have a bit of extra information about what they're
It's amazing how much a little edge that can give you too.
Totally. So
what's Jim looking to see in his opening hand? Do you think, obviously Scavenging Ooze?
Definitely still Scavenging Ooze because it's one of the most singular pieces of interaction.
Well, it promotes the clock and also slows down your opponent.
It's going to quickly end Dennis's chances if he gets it down quickly. Nihil Spellbomb also very, very important, as we've said. It costs just 1 mana to use, and after that it's going to sit in play and threaten to nuke the graveyard.
And one of the really insidiously powerful things about Nihil Spellbomb is generally the opportunity cost of playing a piece of hate is that sometimes you're going to draw it and it's not going to do enough and it's just going to sit dead. Nihil Spellbomb replaces itself, so it almost costs nothing.
At the absolute worst, Jim can use a Nihil Spellbomb as 1 and a black, draw a card.
Which is not even that bad if you want to draw towards your Scavenging Ooze. If you feel like Scavenging Ooze is going to win the game on the spot, having another thing at cantrips doesn't even really hurt.
And it means that he can afford to use his Nihil Spellbombs as the situation requires. He doesn't need to save them until he wipes out 40 cards of the graveyard. He can trade a Nihil Spellbomb for a Bloodghast and a Plies Amalgam. And that's it's no game-winning play, but it buys him a lot of time. It really disrupts what Dennis is doing.
Speaking of disrupting what Dennis is doing, Grim Lavamancer is actually a really nice little creature. It's going to kill a lot of those 2x toughness creatures, and it also attacks.
Totally
does all kinds of things.
It's very useful little man for 1 mana. It's going to be a little bit difficult for Jim to keep it fed because having to spend 2 cards every time you want to use its activated ability, if he's planning to use this to control the board, it will quickly bleed him dry. But of course, it's he has control over the Grim Lavamancer, so he can pick his spots to use his valuable
It's obviously not
cards.
going to be as good as it is in the affinity or infect matchups where there's so many things to kill. But killing one thing on a good turn can be enough to swing a game.
Totally.
Get that Tarmogoyf through, which might have changed the outcome of the last game.
And having a Grim Lavamancer to get rid of one of those Bloodghasts in combat could give him an extra turn.
Yeah, for sure.
It has a lot of implications.
Better than Inquisition off the top later in the game.
Definitely.
So Dennis is going to turn 1 Faithless Looting, which is what he likes to see. I think that's a Stinkweed and a Prized Amalgam.
And Prized Amalgam. So
both great to put in the graveyard.
I think that he would be really happy with that Faithless Looting. It's giving
How
him
much
a
does
decent...
Imp dredge for? Is it 4?
Dredges for 5,
5.
which is... It's not nothing, as it happens.
He's a cheeky little dude with a bit of death touch too, which isn't
Well,
isn't
not
exactly
quite
right.
Death Touch.
Ooh.
It's... Synchroid Imp came about before the Death Touch keyword
Right.
really came to be more codified in Magic. So while it functions very similar to Death Touch,
Yeah.
it's actually a triggered ability.
Right.
So you can respond to it.
Hopefully Jim can pack those stifles and try and disrupt
course,
that
of course,
Stinkweed Imp
yeah.
plan. Dark Confidant is an excellent Magic card, and it's really
Certainly
good
true.
in this matchup. When you
Especially
just
in
want to draw
Jim's
this
deck.
thing- Yeah.
His curve is very, very low.
Yeah.
As we saw earlier in the day when we had Jim on camera for round 1,
Yeah.
the highest CMC spell in his deck is Chandra Pyromaster at 4,
Right.
and he has 1 copy.
Yeah. So it's
Dark
usually
Confidant.
not going to cost you
Yeah.
too much. And yeah.
Greatness at any cost, but for Jim, a bit of a discount.
Ooh, nice little 2-for-1 there for
Yeah,
Dennis.
can't forget to discard a Prized Amalgam and a Stinkweed Imp,
Yeah.
and clear away both of Jim's cards.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sure
Jim's engine and, yeah, it's
Like
just brutal.
the Dark Confidant is obviously a much greater loss than the Grim Lavamancer, which was
Yeah.
really just a nice thing to have, but
Yep.
not essential.
Ooh.
Here is a Grim Flayer,
Yep.
and there are
So we got
land
creature.
and creature in the graveyard,
Yeah.
which will mean that he's halfway to Delirium.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, he has a clear path. Like, Amalgam could potentially be coming into play tap this turn.
Yeah, and it looks like a Narcomoeba.
Right.
But Narcomoeba blocking Grim Flayer does very little due to the trample.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's still gonna let Jim tailor his graveyard to quickly turn on Delirium or...
Flayer's going to guarantee that drawing of the Spellbomb or the Scoos a bit earlier than otherwise would happen naturally.
Yeah, he gets to clear away mediocre cards in the hope of getting
Yeah.
better draws.
Yeah, I think
As well as putting
the
on very
inclusion of Flayer
important
and
clock.
Dark Confidant improves the inclusion of the rats in that the longer the game goes, the more likely you are to draw these specific hate cards.
Definitely.
And so any kind of Anger of the Gods or Damnation even is going to be a really nice way of guaranteeing you draw the hate,
Yeah.
shut them down, and then close them out.
Grim Flayer is also very well set up to live through an Anger of the Gods.
Yeah, true.
Sitting around as a 4/4.
Yeah, not too shabby.
If Jim gets in a spot where he can clear away Dennis's board and still have a bunch of pressure with some cheap 4/4s, he'll be very happy with his
Sitting
situation.
pretty. Is this the dredge of the old?
So it looks like a decent chunk of cards. So either a Stinkweed Imp or a Grave Troll was just dredged before, but
Right.
having a bit of faithless looting going on, which is partly responsible for the sudden extension of Dennis's graveyard.
Yeah, geez, it's huge. There's at least a couple of Grave Trolls in there.
Yeah, and
Stinkweed Imps.
uh,
Now would be a nice time for a Spellbomb.
definitely, if Jim were to play and use a Nihil Spellbomb right on his next turn,
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's unlikely he has it in hand. I would definitely be looking to put that in place sooner rather than later. You
Yeah.
don't even need the black up to sacrifice
no, certainly
it.
not.
Yeah.
Drawing the card is nice, but you need to do it when you can. It's possible that Jim does have the Spellbomb but is slow rolling and wants to
Right.
take out more of Dennis's engine,
That's
which is a
very
bit
next level.
risky.
Yeah.
If Jim is running that plan,
Right.
but he is an exceptionally high level player
Right.
who has had a lot of success by thinking the level above.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm Dennis and I see that he has 1 mana up, doesn't play Spellbomb, I'm going to assume the coast is pretty clear to start going in on my engine.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, that's quite clever. I could see Jim not playing the Spellbomb if he has something like Anger of Gods in hand. So like
Yeah.
4/6 extension and then mop up with extra value. I'm definitely interested to see what's going on. He has fetched the second red source, so it could be a tell. No second black source. To me,
Which
that
yeah,
says
it sort of
no damage.
implies that the Lilianas have also
Yeah.
been reduced
Yeah.
or
I
removed
trust that
entirely.
Jim has removed them, having played Magic before. He might be aware that they're not very good here. Dennis's board isn't increasing at an irrelevant rate. He has
Not
got
really. He's still
5
a
power
little bit
input.
behind the 8-ball, given how big his graveyard is.
Yeah, that's
He
true.
hasn't really been able to leverage it as much as I'm
Yeah.
sure
he has hit
would
a,
have liked.
a lot of land,
Yes.
from what I can see.
He does have a Life from the Loam
Yep.
in hand at the moment, I believe.
Oh, I think it's actually at the end of the graveyard.
Yes,
I
yes,
think
it
that
is.
was what he dredged.
That's what he
has played it
discarded.
again,
Yeah. So he can start taking advantage of all those lands in his graveyard to start building up a stockpile for a big confligate later.
So Jim's connected with the Grimflayer. Dennis has declined to block with the Narcomoeba.
Which is a pretty reasonable choice for him.
Yeah, I think so, because it almost does nothing, and it also represents, 1 extra damage. And right?
Saving a damage for yourself now is probably less important to Dennis than the extra damage that it represents.
Definitely.
Especially since there's a flyer. If Jim is able to stabilize the board with Tarmogoyfs and Grimflayers, Narcomoeba's still going to keep flying over and pecking away for 1.
So I can't quite make out what Jim's looking at, but I think I saw a Golgari Charm, a Dark Confidant.
Yeah.
I don't know how powerful those cards are.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see if he is just going to bin the whole 3 and look for something, something more impactful.
I think he's actually looked at the 3 and decided to leave the table and just
possibly going for a judge call.
Ask a judge question. Yeah, very interesting. So it potentially could be a judge question around the Golgari Charm. It is a kind of card with enough modes and enough weird stuff going on that there can be confusion around it.
It's possible that he's wants to get some clarification on how the -1/-1 effect interacts with the triggered abilities from his graveyard.
That makes sense. Is it a consideration putting something like Golgari Charm in the yard now to try and get that Delirium on for...
I think so. Yeah. Because currently the Golgari Charm doesn't really seem particularly special. Yep. It gets rid of a Narcomoeba and it temporarily gets away with it. And as you can see, he's putting the Charm in the graveyard, keeping the other 2.
Right. I think I saw a Dark Confidant. But
it looked very much like it.
But by making the Old Meta 4/4, this Anger of the Gods, I think is particularly good.
Very, very powerful.
So Dennis is attempting to put him in his yard. I think he'll know. So exiling is so important because it just means that there's that many less dudes that are going to be coming back into play every time you get a trigger.
Although that's not really the most satisfying Anger of the Gods for Jim.
Right.
Only getting 1 Bloodghast and 1 Prized Amalgam doesn't really destroy the engine by any means. No. Dennis still has 3 more copies of each of those.
Right.
And he's hit one of the Prized Amalgams this turn.
Yeah, that's true. It is, however, like a way of representing a clock. Right?
Yeah, Jim is not going to turn up his nose at it. It's still... so another dredge of Golgari Grave Trolls occurring right now. He's flashback a Faithless Looting by the looks of things.
Oh, another Grave Troll. Right,
yeah, so that's... I think maybe Jim is going to be wishing he saved that Anger of the Gods at the end of this turn because it looks like 2 Prized Amalgams are coming in along with that Narcomoeba and 2 Bloodghasts as well.
Oh, and a Haunted Dead. Nice. I haven't seen that guy floating about. He's quite powerful.
He's very powerful indeed. Yeah, it's only 1 copy in Dennis's dredge list because despite being the main engine in the standard version of this strategy, which is obviously much less explosive, having to pay 2 mana to get back a guy
is almost a fair amount of
mana. That's too fair.
Yeah. I wonder if Jim is going to regret playing this Anger of the Gods a bit early. I don't know if it is early, but
I'm not sure. There's it looks like 3 Narcomoebas now and 3 Bloodghasts and 2 Prized Amalgams.
Because Dennis was going to attack for 6, which is going to put Jim on 10. Is that going to turn on all the Bloodghasts?
It would have, yeah, but as you can see from the board state now, he's going to get below 10 pretty soon.
Golgari Charm wouldn't be too bad against this board state.
He has tossed a couple of, in the cruel light of hindsight, a couple of powerful tools.
Yeah, see, I don't know how powerful. I mean, it is funny that, Dennis is looking to put 6 1-toughness creatures into play after Jim bids the Golgari Charm, but, I think Jim has to focus on how he's going to win the game, not necessarily get a couple of favourable trades. Oh, I think Dennis might have identified one of the ways Jim's going to win the game. He's played Pithing Needle, naming potentially Scavenging Ooze, potentially Nihil Spellbomb.
Yeah.
Skoos. Yeah, I think Scavenging Ooze is definitely...
It's a safer bet because Dennis has a bit of a difficult situation when guessing an artifact that taps to remove things from the graveyard. Because Relic of Progenitus is also a commonly played card in the format.
Yeah, that's definitely a consideration.
And I'm sure that he doesn't want to to swing at one of those artifacts and miss when he knows that Scavenging Ooze is going to be in.
I honestly, as Dennis, I think because Jim has 2 green sources, I would be tempted to name Nihil Spellbomb because Spellbomb is going to deal with the entirety of the graveyard. And even if he lands a Scavenging Ooze, he's only going to make it a 3/3 for a turn. And because Dennis has access to Dredge 6, I think Conflagrate is just as reasonable an answer to Scooz.
Definitely.
And, you know, Scavenging Ooze can, you know, do some work over the course of a long game. But I think Dennis, with that kind of health, that amount of bodies in the graveyard, could actually look to close the game quickly. So I'm not saying it is a misstep, but I would be tempted to name Nihil Spellbomb personally, just to close that out.
Perhaps on that note, though, given that he obviously wants to end the game quite quickly, doesn't want to keep dragging it out and giving Jim more opportunities to draw his hate.
Yeah.
Removing Jim's ability to gain life with the Scavenging Ooze also is a major factor.
Yeah, Scavenging Ooze is such a multifaceted card. The ability to gain life, add a clock, exile things from the graveyard. Such an excellent inclusion. Really. Yeah, there are actually quite a few decks in Modern that care about their graveyard. And
definitely.
Scavenging Ooze also in matchups where they don't care about their graveyard, he just happens to be a good body. Yeah. Even in Burn, like just gaining 2 or 3 life in a game can be all that it takes to win a game.
So there's a Kitchen Finks down from Jim, as we sort of anticipated earlier.
Yep.
And it's not the most impressive thing that he can be doing, but it gains him life.
Yep.
It blocks pretty well.
Yep.
And that's a Dredge free hitting a Conflagrate and another Loam and a Troll.
Yeah, so like Conflagrate now is getting interesting. Yeah, so lots of dredges going on for Dennis. So if I'm Dennis, I'm worried about the Spellbomb, but
totally.
He does have some bodies in the yard.
Yeah, there's some good bodies in the yard, but he's also starting to run the risk of just putting too much into his graveyard to recover if there is a Spellbomb. So I don't think he can really worry about it at this point.
He is currently attacking for 2, 4, 6, 8. Not leaving any Narcomoebas up as a consideration for blocking.
No.
They are pretty average at blocking at this stage with the Trampler.
Yeah, he did put one of the Narcomoebas he had in front of the Grimflayer last turn, perhaps forgetting about the Trample.
Oh, I see. Yep. So attacking for 8.
So Jim is neglecting to block with the Kitchen Finks here.
That's interesting.
I think that given that he is representing a swing back of 7, he could quite happily just be willing to once again go to the races.
Yeah, I don't see a Raging Ravine in play or anything, but
no.
I mean, theoretically, you kind of a Lightning Bolt or 2.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what he has. As Dennis, I would be hesitant to crack any fetch lands at this stage if I'm not putting up some blockers, because I wouldn't want to be dead to a bolt. Yeah,
I think at this stage he is going to be keeping his life total as healthy as possible.
I don't want to speak too soon. He's looking to put some fetch lands in his hand.
I think that these fetch lands are going to be seeing Conflagrate fodder in their future. As it looks like he has just the one Conflagrate? No, 2 Conflagrates in the graveyard.
Ooh.
So he can use one as a way of clearing away some of these.
Yeah, it looks like he is tapping matter for a Conflagrate. How much?
We have seen Dennis just stone discard his entire hand to Conflagrates over the course of the day. And I'm not sure what he'd really be looking for here in that regard.
Well, I feel like killing your opponent's board is going to mean that your creatures, because they're just inevitable. Yeah,
killing the Flayer here is gives him a lot of extra time.
Yeah.
3 is substantially less than 7. That Kitchen Finks, even with the help of some Lightning Bolts, is going to take a couple more turns before it really gets the job done.
I wonder if Jim's going to regret the cards that he put on top with the Grimflayer.
So it looks like he's just picked up a Terminate.
Yeah.
And Terminate doesn't really rumble well with the Dredge's board. Killing Narcomoeba is removing it from the board, but it's a very low impact threat.
Yeah.
And the Bloodghasts are just so inevitable. They're going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And now that Jim's on 10, they're coming back with haste.
Well, I mean, it's almost wise that Dennis named Scooz, because Scooz is probably one of the outs at this stage. Like, I don't know what other outs Jim has. Like, he could attack with his Finks, terminate his own Finks, gain some life block.
Although that is quite loose, especially given how low on cards Jim is.
Yeah.
He is, he's in a pretty bad spot, I think.
Yeah, I mean, whenever playing Jund, always look to 2-4 on yourself. It's
obviously that's the plan. Use multiple cards of your own to only slightly deal with your opponent's recurrent threats. But
Yeah, so Dennis
More
wisely
seriously,
didn't fetch. Yeah, his opponent hasn't got a Raging Ravine in play. Ooh,
He does have a Liliana the Last Hope, however.
okay.
And
Is it Jim's last hope? What do we think?
I'm thinking so. He's going to need to find something pretty special
Right.
off that roll down ability, because right now destroying those X1s
Yeah.
is pretty
Yeah.
medium.
Yeah.
They're-
Well, like the
they're
fix is
gonna
going to be able to kill a Bloodghast for
Yeah,
a
it's gonna be
turn,
eat a
gain
blood-
a bit of life.
Yeah, it's going to be able to trade and then come back to life with
Yep.
assist, and then do that again next turn. But that's only a holding strategy. It
Yeah.
doesn't progress Jim's chances of winning. So Liliana is taking out a Narcomoeba here.
Yep.
Potentially Jim is running it out there as a bit of a smokescreen. He would like Dennis to direct some of his attackers
Right.
at the Liliana to
Yeah,
buy him more
Liliana's not
time.
looking to ult for another good couple of turns. Right?
Yeah, and as powerful as Liliana's ult is, it might not even be enough.
No, yeah.
Uh,
It takes a few turns to really kick in, doesn't it?
Yeah, and even if Jim is able to hold on for enough turns to get the Liliana emblem,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be needing to use those zombies defensively.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that Jim is taking advantage of getting rid of one of the X1s,
Yep.
in the case of Narcomoeba, permanently,
Yep.
and hopefully getting a bit of pressure off himself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think he's looking to play those out. Like, if he can live for a turn, he could look to draw a Damnation or an Anger of the Gods, and potentially be back
Totally.
in this.
He can't draw any Anger of the Gods. He only has one copy in
Okay.
his 75,
Yep.
and having used that already,
Yeah, it makes a very slim margin of drawing another one.
yeah, he is going to have a lot of trouble doing that.
Yeah.
So Damnation it's okay,
Yeah.
but the Bloodghast with haste is just so important in this
Yeah.
matchup, and so
Yeah.
and really quite scary for Jim.
Is it worded below 10 life, or is it 10 or less life?
As far as I'm aware, it's 10 or less.
Yeah, that would make sense.
As that was a theme in the original Zendikar block of
Yeah.
the vampires
Yeah.
getting
Good
more
call.
powerful when their opponents are at
Yeah.
half of their starting life total.
Yeah, Bloodcast has been, a good
Hugely
creature.
impactful in this
Yeah,
matchup.
yeah, yeah.
So Kitchen Finks is laying its life down for the cause and
Half of its life.
half of its life down for the cause,
Yep.
down on one of those Bloodghasts.
So he's going to 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's going to take 5 and then gain 2, I think, at this stage. Yeah, so this is one of the more degenerate stages of the game for Dredge. Like, even though Dredge doesn't have many cards in their hand, every single Dredger in the yard represents draw 4, draw 5, because you're putting that many cards in your yard, turning that many things on. Jim's, one card off the top of his deck. Very fair at this stage of the game.
And as we said a little bit earlier on, the Dredge deck can be super, super aggressive.
Yeah.
End the game on turn 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then we get to these sorts of games where Dennis has just been relying on these Bloodghasts to grind it out. Every time that Jim needs to use a removal spell or a Planeswalker activation to make that sort of thing happen,
Yep.
Dennis can just get them all back really soon afterwards.
Yeah, especially when you're life from the loam, guaranteeing those land drops.
He's never going to run out of lands.
Yeah.
Worst comes to worst, he can crack a fetched land, find nothing, and
Yeah.
then pick it back up again with life from the loam.
Gross. Interesting. I wonder what Dennis's quickest path to victory from here is. So he's looking to put some amalgams into play, potentially represent lethal next turn.
Yeah. He also still has the Configurates in his graveyard, so the
Yep.
life from the loam, putting more cards in his hand is
I
also
see. Yep.
also super relevant
Yeah.
because every card in his hand is worth a damage.
It looks like he's casting another one. For 4.
Okay, so he's dealt.
Getting rid of Jim's board.
He's dealing a damage to the
Yeah, he
kitchen
sort of,
things.
he pointed it at Jim's face, at kitchen things.
I think
oh,
that he's
redirecting.
pointing
I
it
see,
at
I
the
see.
at the
Yeah,
Liliana, so
yeah.
the Liliana can't retrieve kitchen finks with its -2 ability.
Very good. That's pretty interesting.
Also puts some extra amalgams in the graveyard.
I think that's quite a safe play.
Yeah.
So what are Jim's outs?
He's looking pretty slim at this
Yeah,
stage.
yeah,
He needs
like-
to find something very impactful.
Damnation gives him a turn.
Donation sort
Doesn't
of
feel like an out,
doesn't
does it?
doesn't really feel like an out. I think that it actually is going to be Nihil Spellbomb or bust.
Right.
Getting rid of Dennis's graveyard is step 1 for Jim.
Right.
And
Well, yeah, if he can terminate a Bloodghast now,
Yeah, if he
and then untap, draw a nice Nihil Spellbomb,
use
cantrip,
Liliana to
use
take
Liliana,
out one of
minimise
the other
board.
one.
You know, there is a path back in.
Yeah.
He's opted to kill the Narcomoeba.
Yeah, it's a little bit more secure
Yep.
because
I think he's
it's
just
an
played a
overgrown
land tapped.
tomb.
Yeah.
So killing the Narcomoeba with the Terminator is a little bit more secure because Dennis has easy access to lands. He's got
Yeah.
his whole graveyard
Yeah.
from those Life from the Limes.
Yeah.
And it gives him a little bit of extra time.
Yeah.
That one recurrent damage is pretty significant because because Dennis is bringing back 3 Bloodghasts this
Yeah.
turn, and they all have haste.
Yeah, that's
So Jim is going to be going down to 1 at the absolute best.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very best, does it?
No. Possibly Dennis will direct one of the Bloodghasts at the Liliana.
That's interesting. Just close that door.
Yeah, because having the Liliana on 2 loyalty does represent
Yeah.
a Kitchen Finks, given...
Well, if he has a Conflagrate in yard,
I don't believe he does. I think that he's used his Conflagrates at this stage.
Yeah. Do they usually run 2? Is that right?
I think he plays 3, but I think that he's
Yep.
used all 3 copies.
Oh, great.
So that must be a bit of a load off for Jim, that 3 out of a possible 4 are gone.
Right. I wonder if he's feeling that relief right now.
I doubt it, honestly. He's in a little bit of a difficult situation.
Oh, most definitely.
But I definitely think that for Jim to decisively put himself back in the game, he would have needed to draw a Nihil Spellbomb last turn.
Definitely. I feel like that was a window that got closed.
So
It is interesting as to whether or not he could have, like, if there's a Spellbomb sitting on the top of his library right now, like, if maybe he could have used the Grim Flayer trigger a little bit differently.
possibly.
It's always hard to say.
He did elect to keep 2 cards on top.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I think it was a Finks and a
Terminator and a Finks, I believe.
Terminator Finks, right?
Or possibly Dark Confront, but it was a
Yeah.
little difficult to see
Yeah,
due to the camera angles.
yeah.
Oh, well. It looks like Jim is packed up, so we missed the finish,
Well,
unfortunately.
congratulations to Dennis.
Yeah, the winner of our second
Yeah.
Paragon Open, and Jim putting up a very respectable second place finish.
Yeah, definitely well played. And Dennis showing a lot of experience in the matchup, naming the really relevant card with his Pithing Needle, and
Certainly.
playing to his avenue of victory, which is an early board presence, closing it out before the hate and the
Yeah.
mid-range dudes come online.
Able to successfully switch gears into a more grind-based strategy of
Yeah.
relying on those Bloodghasts.
Yeah, and there was no damnation on Q to deal with
No.
the cumbersome board state.